What's up everyone, it's Evan, and today I'm going to be going over my newest build that has been up and running for about 2 months at this point, and which is the start of a non-photosynthetic reef tank. And I'll be going into what are non-photosynthetic corals a bit, and then also what I am running on this tank, since I do want to get corals here within a few weeks or so. So non-photosynthetic corals differentiate from photosynthetic corals because non-photosynthetic corals lack zooxanthellae algae, and zooxanthellae algae is what photosynthetic corals have that help them get most of their food through photosynthesis. Now, usually coming from deeper waters where light isn't as readily available and where light is usually a lot dimmer, these corals lack zooxanthellae algae, so we call them azox corals. And because of this, they get their energy by solely feeding on other foods like plankton, because they don't have that ability to photosynthesize. And because of this is why a lot of aquarists in the past have usually had a lot of trouble keeping non-photosynthetic corals, or people just call them NPS corals for an abbreviation to that term. But recently, in the past couple years, a lot more people have been having success with non-photosynthetic corals, especially in NPS dominant reefs. And after seeing a lot of these really amazing looking reefs that no one has really ever done before, I really wanted to do something like that, but kind of on a smaller scale because I don't have room for a bigger tank. Something like a 90 gallon or up is not possible right now, so I ended up going with something on a smaller scale, which leads me to an in-depth tour of what I've come to hopefully see as the key component for this setup to thrive, and what usually every NPS system should have. So starting off with the tank, this is just your standard Aqueon 20 gallon long. It's 30 inches long by 13 inches wide by 13 inches tall. And I ended up going up with this size for a couple of reasons. The first was I thought it would be easy to feed. Because it is pretty shallow, I can easily get in there and spot feed the different corals that I need to spot feed. And I also thought that it would be a lot easier to get a strong current going in here than something like a 29, which I could have done a 29 because the stand is meant for 29 gallon tanks, but I ended up going with a 20 long instead because of that reason. And usually people would recommend doing something like this in a bigger tank because you are putting in so many nutrients. So if this smaller setup does succeed and do well for probably over a year, I do want to look into upgrading it to probably something like a 40 breeder, because it is also shallow, but it's just more tank volume and it provide quite a bit more room, and I think it also just look really cool. And the black background you do see on the back is just black window film from Home Depot, which I do use on a lot of my tanks, and it does work really well. And that's basically a rundown of the tank itself. So let's get on to the equipment and let's talk a bit about flow. So filtration wise, I am using an AquaClear 70 on here because for a 20 long, it does provide a really good turnover rate, and especially in an NPS setup will help get rid of a lot of those nutrients. Excess nutrients, and it also provides a really good flow for a tank like this. But because there are some dead spots, I also do have I believe it's a Sun 800 gallon per hour wave maker on here on the right side of the tank for any dead spots, and it also provides flow. With the two on, it does provide flow that is coming from both sides, which is really good because a lot of non-photosynthetic corals do usually like heavy indirect flow from multiple angles, so this should be strong enough to provide that. And for temperature, I am using Aquarium Co-op's new heater. This is the 100-watt version. And because these corals do come from deeper water, they usually like it a little cooler than what you would keep your normal reef tank at. So I am running this tank at about 74.5 degrees. And this is the one thing that I couldn't figure out for the longest time, because every article that I was looking at where people were going in depth about their NPS systems, I just couldn't find anything about temperature. So I want to give a big thank you to Sean at Cristata Reef, because he let me know what the Aquarium in the Pacific's NPS tank was running at, which really helped with deciding what temperature to run the tank at, and as well as Dark Side Reefing on Instagram. also said he's running his at around 74.2, I believe, so I might drop it just a little bit to see if there are any noticeable changes in the future. And I actually didn't talk about lighting. So lighting on this tank is virtually none, because since these are non-photosynthetic corals and they don't use light for food, it actually is a lot better if you don't run the light, because it can end up causing algae issues, which are really bad for things like argonians. You don't want algae smothering all over them, and so I'll only be running a small night crew light that I have in storage for whenever I want to take pictures or take videos of the tank. But other than that, I most likely won't be running a light on the tank. So as for what corals I would like to put in here, definitely a lot of gorgonians and sun coral. I actually started a thread over at Reef to Reef, so I'll put up a picture of the list I made of species I would like to get. Not everything on that list can go in here, just because once things do start growing out, they'll start competing for space, especially because it is a smaller system. But some of the things I would probably prioritize over others is the red sea fan, the purple anthogorgia, the Acanthogorgia isoxia, and definitely some different sun corals and dendros. And as you can see, the hardest one on that list is probably the blueberry gorgonian, because those are still extremely challenging to keep. No one has really figured out the key to success yet, and what I was thinking is I could start off with a smaller frag, because usually a lot of people start off with really massive colonies. So my thinking is if you start off with a smaller piece, it has time to adjust to your system, and because it is a smaller piece, it doesn't require as much food, and overall I think it just have a better chance at thriving in your tank. But again, no one's really figured out that key yet, so I'm not sure if I'll try one, and that'll be something to see for the future. As for fish and inverts, I'm still not really set on anything. I was looking at a group of long spine cardinal fish, but after talking to Tyler at Inland Reef and a couple other people, it turns out that even though they are said to be the cardinal fish that won't kill each other off, they ended up still killing each other off. So I'm not sure if I'll attempt those, just because I don't think I have enough line of sight, and I really would not like them to start killing each other off. So not really decided on fish. But as far as cleanup crew, just your standard things, probably like Nassari snails and micro brittle stars to help with uneaten food. I don't think I should encounter too many algae issues, so all of the snails like astrias and ceres, those probably won't make an appearance in here. So yeah, for right now it looks like this tank will mostly be coral dominant, and I'm very excited about that. So let's actually get to the topic about what am I going to feed this tank with, because that is the most important part. So as for feeding, I do have the old tried and true Reef Nutrition products lined up. I have Phyto Feast, Oyster Feast, Phyto Feast Live going, and I do want to try pack pods, because those are also advertised as being really good for things like non-photosynthetic sea fans especially, so I might look into trying something like that. And then of course I also have a baby brine shrimp, and am also probably looking into trying something like Cyclops E's. So in the end, I would like to try and feed this tank probably upwards of 3 to 4 times a day. A lot of the species I'm looking at, they don't require anything crazy like 6, 7, 8 daily feedings, because there are corals like that. So I want to try and steer away from things like that, just because this is a smaller system again, and with 3 to 4 feedings I should be able to keep on top of that manually. But I also am looking at setting up a refrigerated auto feeder, just for when I go away on vacation and things like that. And thankfully there is space under the stand to do something like that, so I will be looking at ways where I can set that up. And yeah, that is basically a quick rundown of this tank setup and what my plans are with it, and I'm very excited. This is a new part of the hobby that I have not really dabbled in yet. I have kept sun coral, I have kept the red and yellow finger gorgonians, but that's basically it with non-photosynthetic corals. So this is going to be a massive learning curve, and I am ready to adjust and tweak things as we go along this way, and hopefully by the end of the month I can get the first coral or two going in here, just to see how things are going, and it should be a very fun tank. I've heard from a lot of people that have done non-photosynthetic tanks. They are a lot of work, of course, but they can also be very rewarding at the same time, and that's kind of like the motto for the hobby, is that it's a lot of work, but in the end it is very rewarding, but especially more with a non-photosynthetic system, just because you do have to put in a lot of extra work. But yeah, that is basically everything that is going on for right now, and hopefully by the end of the month I can get a update going with hopefully 1 or 2 corals in there and telling you guys how they're doing. So with that being it, I hope everyone follows me on this journey, and maybe I can inspire some of you guys to try a non-photosynthetic tank as well in the future. So with that being it, I hope to see you all in the next one.